Last time I was in this room, I was answering questions about whether I was a John Deere guy or not. Seems like about 5 years ago. But good afternoon, everyone. At 9 o'clock this morning, I met with Mike Riley and notified him at that time that I was going to relieve him of his duties as head coach of Nebraska football. We talked for about 15, 20 minutes. It was no surprise to me that he took that very, very well. Incredibly wonderful human being and a very, very good football coach. At 9:30, I had a chance to sit down with the assistant coaches and talk to them about the fact that Mike had been terminated. Told them that all obligations, obviously, to them were going to be kept, and had members of my staff in the room to address questions. At 10 o'clock, I met with the Husker football players. Not all of them are in town, as you might guess, but I think roughly maybe 60-70% of them, and had a similar discussion with them, at which time I told them that linebacker coach Trent Bray was going to be the interim head coach and that he would be in charge until a permanent head coach is hired, and which I do not have a time schedule for that. So, as I mentioned several times to many of you, I had 5 weeks to observe and assess the Nebraska football program. From the very beginning, I wanted to weigh all my options, and one of those was retention. But as you know so well, during that period of time, we went 1-4, had 3 blowout losses, and I just didn't feel that the program was progressing like I had hoped it would. I appreciate the confidence and faith that Chancellor Green and President Bounds have put into me, and starting early today, we're in full-fledged search for a new coach for the Nebraska football program. I did feel, because I know this will come up, that our fan base, our storied fan base, is fractured and fragile, and that's very concerning to me. These fans have been through a lot over the last 20 years. They and the university, and certainly the players and all involved, in my opinion, deserve to be in a position to be back competing for championships in the Big Ten Conference and nationally. So that's going to be the intent. I told the players today, nobody wants to go 4-8. I want to get this program to where we're disappointed if we go 8-4. And that can happen again. Everything is set here. And I have observed and assessed that. This table is set as well as any place in the United States in regards to resources, facilities, infrastructure, and fan support. It's all right here. And it's a very appealing position in a very prestigious conference with wonderful leadership, and I'm not including myself. I'm primarily talking about President Bounds and Chancellor Green. I feel privileged to be in that leadership group, and I'm going to find a real good fit for our next football coach. So with that, I think I'll start taking questions and fire away.
Bill, what are you looking for in the future of the head football coach?
Well, we talk about fit. This is a unique place at Nebraska, and the right fit, first of all, has to have somebody with tremendous morals, a good teacher, a good mentor, someone who is competitive, and preferably has head coaching experience in major college football. I think those are the kind of people that we can attract, and certainly that's what we're going to target.
Define major college football.
Major college football is basically FBS. I could have been more specific and said Power 5, but ideally someone who's coaching in the FBS as a head coach.
Bill, have you been in contact with any representatives of Scott Frost?
I have had third-party people involved with several agents, representatives, search firms. That's no secret. I said in my opening remarks that I was assessing things and checking all my options, and that's the best way to do that, is to have somebody else doing all that legwork on some of these people that I feel it could be a good fit.
How many other candidates have you identified?
How many have I identified? I'd say 6. I had 6 originally. You've heard about the list in the top drawer. I expanded that to 6 this time, and all I thought and think are very good options.
Are there any financial limitations on this hire? I mean, is there a budget you have to stay within, or can you do whatever it takes to make this the right hire?
It's not an unlimited budget. I try to be sensible when we're doing this, but at the same time, we got to compete in the market, and we're willing to do that. And and those are usually pretty big dollars these days.
Perception, or what you sense is the perception of the Nebraska job?
It is, for all the reasons I just described, it's a good job. And I'm going to get more specific now. We have a support staff of over 350 full-time employees. We have as fine a facilities, and I'll just zero in on football, as there is in the country. And I've seen about all of them. We've got a unique fan base that has, as you all know, filled Memorial Stadium since 1962. We're the only show in the state. There's so many things that are appealing to Nebraska. What we need to do is get the brand back out there, as I talked about in my press conference, and dust it off and get it back to being a source of pride. And that's a matter of making good decisions, and this is certainly a big decision that I have every reason to believe will be a good one.
When did you know for sure it was time to move on from the staff? And how long
Well,
have you kind of been looking at other options?
I didn't feel good after the Minnesota game, but that was kind of in conjunction with other things that I like to look at in regards to how the players themselves are progressing. Again, Mike Riley and his people do a marvelous job. It just got started going the wrong way, and when that happens, you have to fight factors like morale problems, injuries, some of these things that you've noticed as you've covered the games, and even culture. And those are all fixable, but you add them all up, and it usually does not show well on the scoreboard. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. It just got out of hand, it seemed to me. And the Minnesota game on the road, an opponent that realistically I thought should have had a very good chance of defeating, and we didn't play our best game.
What was the choice to make Trent Gray interim head coach?
What's that?
What was the decision making Trent Gray interim?
You know, in just 4.5, 5 weeks of being here, I didn't really get to know many of the coaches. I just let them coach, and they were doing a very good job of recruiting, trying to hang on to recruits. But I've known Trent Bray for a long, long time. His son, or he is the son of Craig Bray, who was a defensive coordinator at Arizona State for Dennis Erickson, who my son played for. And Trent was one of his coaches, so I knew him, respected him, and to me, I was someone that I knew I could trust and had the respect of the players.
Bill, have you been offered the job to anybody and been told no?
No. No.
Bill, what's your timetable? How long can you wait for a coach to tell you that they want the job?
Well, there's coaches that are interested in the job. I have not offered it to anybody, and they said no, as was the question over here. The sooner the better, and that's why you got to be actively working things prior to today to gauge the interest. We've got an early signing period on the 20th through the 22nd of December. That's something new this year. And it would be nice, obviously, to have someone in place with a staff quite a ways prior to that in a perfect world. Well, we've still got seasons going. There's games today. There's conference championship games. And then we go into the bowl season, too. And so there's lots of college football still to be played. But having said that, this is the time of year where these types of decisions and moves are made. So a lot of dominoes start to roll right now, and there'll be more coaches become available and have just in the last 2-3 days.
From the feelers that you put out, do you sense from the coaches' end of it that there's an understanding that the timeline has changed a little bit with the early signing period, or do you expect
I want to touch on that because the early signing period is a factor, but not to the degree that we should make a bad decision just so we make sure we sign 1 or 2 players early. So I will say this, if we bump up against that early signing period and we're not there yet, the sky isn't falling. It's more important that this is a hire that provides stability and a true identity to our football program. And so even though I do feel that's important, it's not a priority in the grand scheme of things here.
Will Trent Bray or any coaches go on the road this week to recruit?
No.
So you just be phone conversations?
Yeah.
Will you talk to any recruits yourself as well? Or?
That has not been my practice unless they've come to campus. But within the rules, I'll do whatever we need to do, and sometimes just to calm prospects down and their parents. I have, I guess, done that on occasion, not a lot. But the competitiveness in college football and recruiting is every bit as competitive as on the field itself. And so, believe me, when this press release went out, there are other schools going to our committed players, our prospects right now, telling them all kinds of things that probably aren't true. And so any way I can assist in that regard, I'll be available.
How quickly do you expect any new coach, whoever you hire, to turn around the program from a 4-8 season?
I would have to get their assessment of our roster as it sits now. What style of play? Many times I'll use Mike Leach, my coach at Washington State. If he were to leave and someone came in that wanted to run the veer option, that's probably going to take 4 years because the players aren't there. So that is one of the factors I like to look at in regards to the fit part. And I believe, and again, because as I mentioned earlier, that the table is set, The usual rule of thumb is year 3. The places I've been before, we had to build and create everything that we already have here. So even 3 was a little bit early. It was 4 and sometimes 5. But at Nebraska, depending on what the offense is, the defensive scheme, 2, and more realistically, probably 3.
Bill, you said you got 6 candidates on your list, and that'll probably grow, but you're also out in public and you understand that there's an assumption here that you're gonna target one guy specifically first. Have you considered the reaction if you don't hire Scott Frost?
Well, Scott Frost, and I've said this, to the media, is a very good football coach. He's in the heat of trying to win a conference championship. He's obviously a Nebraskan, and he's getting a lot of attention from several other schools. But Scott is someone that I am considering. But I'm being very sensitive to the fact that he's still coaching a team, and he's having a heck of a run. I don't know if I saw the very end of his game last night from my suite here, and that kickoff return, that was pretty special. But I've never said I was going after Scott Frost. A lot of other people have, and I can let you read my emails sometime that I should be going after Scott Frost. But you know what? That's a tribute to Nebraskans. He's one of ours, played for us, and has gone on and paid his dues. And he's got a good job that I believe he really likes, but he's got a lot of interest in him right now.
Is he your priority?
I don't have a priority right now.
It was noticed that the assistants, aside from Gray, are no longer on Nebraska's website. They were all let go. Is that because they were tied to Mike Riley's contract? Will the future coach have a choice to retain?
Yep. It is because he's tied in all of the contractual aspects of that. They all received letters. These are tough things to do. You can't be in the business as long as I have, and many of them without having gone through it at least once or twice, or in rare cases and unfortunate ones more than that. But I hire head coaches, and head coaches hire their assistants. And I would give the new coach every bit of flexibility to create his staff however he wants. I think we got some talented coaches here, and I think we've got coaches that think very highly of Nebraska and feel we can recruit here. But having said that, I haven't really gotten to know any of them except for Trent very, very well at this point.
In the interim, do any of the support staff or behind the scenes people stay in place, or are they also no longer employed?
We're going to keep 1 or 2 in regards to recruiting. Trent needs to focus on the current players' academic situation, going to class, keeping up with that, their workouts, weight room, strength and conditioning, and of course behavioral things too. A lot of times when you have this kind of a transition and nobody's minding the ship, things can go a little bit sideways. And then we'll keep 1 or 2 operations people that will be just primarily focused on the recruiting aspect, making sure those that are committed are continue to have conversations, and that we hang on to them until the new coach and staff can get here.
Mr. Moos, I know you said that you've spoken with search firms. Do you have a search firm locked in, or are they ready to go right now?
I've got a pretty good network out there, and I have drawn on acquaintances and very good friends who happen to work for search firms. I haven't signed a contract with anybody, but certainly draw from their expertise. And really why is because they can get through to agents. And in today's world, almost all of these head coaches have agents, and they want the agents to be the ones talking to the headhunters. And so there is very rarely any face-to-face conversation.
What kind of style of football should a Big Ten team and a Nebraska team play?
Winning style. You know, people say you can't throw the ball in the Big Ten. I don't agree with that. I, for one, like a balanced attack, but I'm not the coach. I think you do need to run the ball. More importantly, I think you need to stop the run. They're both important. I do feel in recent years, and to some degree dating back earlier, and certainly Nebraska is an example, a dual threat quarterback that can stretch a defense. If you got a good one, it's near impossible to stop. And then you throw a little option in with that, couple big tight ends, gifted receivers, and then let's get the black shirts back into being the black shirts. Nebraska's been known for defense. We need to get the defense back, and I know this is an old cliche, but offenses fill the stadium, defenses win championships. And when you're fortunate enough to have both, and Nebraska has had both many, many times, and 5 of them are right down by the elevator downstairs. And I force myself to go by those every day when I come to work. So that has proved to work at Nebraska, primarily in Big 12 days. But it's hard to defend, and that's probably my favorite offense, to tell you the truth. When I was at Oregon, to his credit, Mike Bellotti, for the 12 years he and I were there together, we were the most successful football program in the Pac-10. And he came to me one day, and is right about the time I was leaving, and he says, "Bill, I think we're getting stale on offense. We're getting predictable, okay? And I want to try a little something to put a little more flair into this." And that's when he hired Chip Kelly as his offensive coordinator, and the rest is kind of history there. So they're going to have to deal with that with UCLA now, it looks like.
Did you contact Chip?
Hmm?
Contact?
I had people talk to Chip. And he's a good football coach, and he needs to be coaching. He's been out of it for a year, and he looks like he's choking to death with that necktie on ESPN. So I'm sure he wants to get back to the visor and the short sleeve windbreaker.
Bill, in the last decade, Nebraska's let go of, decade plus, Nebraska's let go of 2 coaches after winning 9 games in the season, and now after 3 seasons. I guess will the new coach get a little bit longer of a leash, and what are your realistic expectations for how long it'll take to turn the program around?
Well, I think I answered that. I think 2 or 3 years, kind of depending on what style. And winning 9 games is no small feat. You know, we've got a lot of 9+ win teams that I walk by, you know, on the suite levels that are great football teams, but there wasn't the parity in college football that you see today. I'm not saying that those still wouldn't have won 9 or 10 games, but there aren't really any real gimmies anymore. You've got to utilize what you have, and the traditions and all those things I think are still important, but you got to appeal to today's young person, and so coaching staffs have to adapt, and I think we've done a real good job here, and I'm talking about social media and all those kind of things. So the Big Ten is the Big Ten, and there's 14 tough programs in the Big Ten. That's never made sense to me, but there's 14 good ones and 14 that can compete. Sometimes it's cyclical, but you look at the ones who are traditionally on the top. You've heard them: Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and Nebraska needs to be in that same conversation. And all I'm saying is they've been able to sustain it. They've taken some dips here and there. Nobody had a bigger challenge than Penn State in recent years, and I tip my hat to what they've done. But they got back there. Michigan's, they're getting back to it. Ohio State just keeps pounding, and Nebraska needs to get back to being Nebraska. What's wrong with that? And I'm not going to judge anybody because I was doing other things way back when, but I have an old saying that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then we went into damage control for a little bit, and we're going to climb out of that because we want to get Nebraska back to being Nebraska. And when it is, it'll catch right back on. And may I take another moment to really salute this incredible fan base. I got all 5 of my kids here yesterday, 2 of them major college football players, Power 5. And I had them down on the field, and they've got their cell phone videos going the whole time, just going, oh, man, hey, look at that. Can you believe this? Can you look it up? No. I mean, and these are guys that play in the game. I hope that is never taken for granted. And for any young man to run through that tunnel and out into nearly 90,000 red-clad fans, boy, that's a thrill of a lifetime, and it needs to be coveted and needs to mean something again. And we'll get that. We'll get there.
So what were your emotions watching the second half yesterday?
I had 2 runs, those. And they're pretty good now, I got to tell you. I've had a lot of pleasant surprises after getting to Nebraska, but that's a pretty good one. It looked like I think yesterday was kind of an illustration how the season's gone. We were in there. We were holding our own, and then a series of mistakes turned momentum to the opponent, and we just never got it back. So, and it's hard to watch. You know why it's hard to watch for the seniors? Because that's their last taste in their mouth, and they've worked hard, and this is the place they chose, and it didn't work out this senior year for them, and that I always feel bad about that.
Time for 1 or 2 more.
Hey, Bill, to what extent, you mentioned the fans and the emails you get, to what extent in this process do you listen to the fans?
I listen to the fans. Again, these are passionate fans. For the most part, they're very polite. They have suggestions. But, if you don't, if I'm not hearing from the fans, then that's a true sign that apathy has bared its ugly head. And it has a little bit. You could tell by the empty seats in the third quarter. I saw that on television right before I came out in the Ohio State game. But they, so many of them, as I've toured the state, and I got a lot more of that to do, how many times I've heard we've had tickets in our family for 4 generations, or we drive 4 hours each way, never missed a game. Time after time after time, and Boy, you don't hear that just everywhere. I know the Midwest is different, and I'm thrilled to be here. But since 1962, to have filled the stadium, boy, that is very, very special. And for them to be patient as they have, I know they're discouraged, and I take it very serious that I care about them and the product they're going to see and pay for on the field. And I never want to see that stadium empty in the third quarter again.
Bill, have you gauged the interest of Kevin Sumlin, who's an old Big Ten guy, Brett Bielema, who's an old Big Ten guy?
Kevin Sumlin, here's a little trivia quiz. Kevin Sumlin and James Franklin were both graduate assistants at Washington State for Mike Price. And they are both very good football coaches. And I don't, did Kevin get let go? No. He's a good football coach. He may win 8 games. And that SEC, they eat their young. And I don't care. Hey, I've said worse. And you just look at the record of not giving a coach adequate time. There's no patience. And it's a great football conference, but you win 8 games in that conference, and Kevin has done some other things, had a Heisman Trophy winner, and I wish him well. I think he's a real good coach and an excellent recruiter.
What about Bielema?
Don't know him real well. Don't know a lot about him.
Dan Mullen?
Dan Mullen's a good coach. I served on a NC2A workforce with him. Was very impressed.
Chris Peterson?
Chris Peterson, I've known since he was all just about out of diapers. He was our receivers coach at Oregon before he went to Boise State and did all that. I think he's pretty happy where he's at. He's my old Cougars are going to give him a whipping today, but I think he's still going to be pretty happy there.
Bill, the small group of support staff that you're talking about retaining, is Billy Devaney part of that group, or was it Bill?
Well, we got to discuss that. Yeah, Billy isn't a contract as the assistant coach that's tied to the head coach. So that and anymore, there's a lot of those support people that that aren't tied directly to the head coach, but would be subject to being terminated if they were replaced by a new head coach. So that all has to remain to be seen. Whoever comes in and makes those determinations.
One last question about the football program. Over the last 5 weeks that you've looked into it, is there anything that jumped out at you that was just concerning, either about not the product on the field, but some of the stuff maybe going on with the staff or administration, that you're just like, this is not what I like?
Little things. I noticed little things. And observing and assessing isn't just on what are we doing on 3rd and 3 inside the 20. It's what's going on day to day and all of that. And there's a lot of good things, but there were some disturbing things for me in regards to the morale and those kind of things. A little bit on discipline. Discipline isn't just getting to practice on time. Discipline is how you wear your uniform. Are you consistent with your teammates, or are you drawing attention to yourself? And a lot of times the little things add up to become big things. And Mike Riley's always been a very disciplined coach. When things start to go, all of a sudden the popcorn is stale, the parking's terrible, I can't get to my seats, and the hot dogs are cold, as I learned on my very first night on the radio. But it's amazing how that all goes away when you're winning 9, 10, or 11 games. But that's just the nature of the beast. And may I say this, because Keith, we're about done, are we?
Whenever, yeah.
Oh, I'll take some more. How's that Michigan-Ohio State game going?
What were the little things that jumped out? Things you'd like to see, maybe not that way anymore?
I'm a stickler about having clean locker rooms and charter airplanes, and I think we got really good young men that are players, but some of those things that, again, get out of hand when you're starting to snowball the other way. The Nebraska uniform should be worn with tremendous pride. I mean, to me, that's like wearing a New York Yankees uniform or Green Bay Packers or the Boston Celtics. And one way or the other, whether I made this move today or not, those things were going to be taken care of from my chair if nobody else's. I'm a stickler on the little things that can make a difference.
Bill, last weekend, Nebraska played a football game 3 hours from Philadelphia, where Central Florida was playing a football game. Did you make a trip to Philly to visit Scott Frost?
I made it. I was trying to buy a condo with my wife, and that consumed most of my day, so I did not travel with the team and got there later. But Scott Frost was, like I said, he's coaching. I told his people that I wanted, and others that are currently coaching, that I wanted to respect the fact that distractions and lack of focus are little things that can become big things and losing a run for a championship. There'll be plenty of time to talk to Scott Frost.
So you didn't go to Philly?
I had no reason to. I hear they have good sandwiches.
Did you go to
Okay, now two more things, if I may. First, this will be the last that I'm going to be available to you. I'm just going to be very, very busy, and this is an amazing media corps. And that's why I wanted to answer as many questions as I could today. So the next time I'll be available is when I introduce our next coach. Secondly, and I think this is important, when I met with Mike today, and actually we had a really good talk. I offered to him, I said, the media is going to be assembled, and if you want to take advantage of them all being here and come in after I'm finished, I'm certainly fine with that. And so Mike's going to come in, and he's going to answer questions and be with you. It's probably going to be about 10 minutes or so. I'm going to go do a radio thing, and then I'll be done. But Mike will come in, and I thought, having done these things before, otherwise all these one-on-ones that can wear you out. So I hope you appreciate that while you're here and can tie it into your story however you might like. Okay? Thank you.